The sound of my 5-year-old daughter screaming as her small body was launched into the air will never leave my mind. One moment she was drawing hopscotch squares. The next she was sprawled on the concrete, bleeding, trembling, crying. And Karen, our HOA dictator, stood there blaming my child while fussing over her scratched bicycle. But what she didn't know? In exactly 3 minutes, a convoy of military SUVs would roll up. My father, Colonel Jim Mitchell, wasn't coming alone. He brought backup. What happened next wasn't just justice. It was a reminder that when you mess with a child, especially one with a military family, you pay. It was one of those mornings that felt almost too peaceful. The kind of morning where the birds chirped in sync, the sun filtered perfectly through the trees, and the air carried the faint scent of maplewood. Emma, my 5-year-old daughter, was outside by 7:30 a.m., armed with a bucket of chalk and a heart full of joy. Her giggles danced down the driveway as she decorated it with butterflies, suns, and hopscotch squares. I was nearby, washing the car, keeping one eye on her and the other on a stubborn patch of dirt on the windshield. She was especially happy that day. Her grandpa Jim was coming to visit. She had counted down all week, practicing the salute he taught her, determined to impress him when he arrived. Emma believed the whole world was her friend. She waved to every dog walker, complimented flowers, and left chalk hearts on neighbors' steps. Our street felt safe, like a storybook page, but in the blink of an eye, that peace shattered. The street, once echoing with childhood joy, would soon erupt in chaos, and everything would change because of one woman who never should have been given power in the first place. Her name was Karen Whitfield, though most neighbors just called her the warden. She ruled Maplewood Heights like her personal kingdom. Tall, always clad in overpriced athleisure, and sporting sunglasses like she was shielding herself from the sins of the common folk, Karen was the self-declared sheriff of our HOA. For 2 years, she made our lives miserable, fining us for minor infractions, issuing nasty emails, and treating every child's sidewalk doodle like graffiti. Last month, she fined us $50 because our trash bin was left out for 32 minutes past the collection time. The month before that, she accused Emma's chalk art of being defacement. She once berated my wife in front of our daughter for parking slightly over the driveway line. When I confronted her about it, she threatened to escalate the matter to the HOA board, a board she chaired like a tyrant. But even in her pettiness, she had never crossed a physical line. That changed that morning. Karen wasn't walking, like usual. She came down the road fast, riding her expensive mountain bike with music blasting through her earbuds. She didn't see the world around her, too focused on her phone, too busy looking down to notice the small girl on the sidewalk, until it was too late. Time slowed to a crawl. I was rinsing the windshield when I saw the blur. Karen speeding downhill, earbuds in, eyes glued to her phone, and Emma crouched near the edge of the driveway, retrieving a piece of chalk that had rolled just out of reach. I dropped the hose. "Emma, move!" I yelled. But it was too late. The front tire of Karen's bike struck Emma with horrifying force. Her tiny body flew 3 feet through the air, limbs flailing before she hit the sidewalk with a sickening, bone-jarring thud. The scream that followed, I'll never forget it. Sharp, piercing, primal. I ran. No, I flew to her side. Emma was curled in a sobbing heap. Blood streaked down her knees, her left wrist bent at an unnatural angle. Her face was pale, cheeks smeared with dirt and tears. I scooped her up carefully, her little body trembling against mine. My white t-shirt turned crimson where her scraped palm clung to me. Behind us, Karen untangled herself from her bike. "Look what your brat did to my bike!" she snapped, brushing dirt off her leggings. "That's going to cost me hundreds." I blinked. Was this real? "You hit her!" I shouted, barely able to contain myself. "She needs an ambulance." Karen rolled her eyes. She shouldn't have been playing so close to the street. That chalk garbage is probably what distracted her, not my fault. Something inside me snapped. Get away from us. Now. But Karen wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and began snapping pictures. I'm documenting this for insurance. You're paying for damages. I'm also calling an emergency HOA meeting about children playing unsupervised. As I turned to carry Emma inside, Karen stepped in front of us. We're not done here, she said coldly. I want your insurance info. And that's when I heard it, the low rumble of engines. The cavalry was coming. Karen had always believed she was untouchable. Her version of reality was one where everyone else was a nuisance, and she was the last line of defense against chaos. Now, even with a bleeding child in front of her, she refused to show an ounce of remorse. You're not going to just walk away from this, she said, as I adjusted Emma's position in my arms. That bike was custom-tuned. I have the receipts. Karen, I said through gritted teeth. You ran over a child! And where were you, huh? Clearly not watching her close enough. This is why I've been saying we need rules about kids playing near the sidewalk. Emma whimpered in my arms, and my rage boiled over. I was about to yell when she held her hand to her wrist and whispered, Daddy, it hurts. I looked down. Her wrist was already swelling, her elbow scraped raw. I needed to get her inside. But Karen, in her infinite self-importance, physically blocked the steps to our porch. I said, We're not done, she repeated, shoving her phone in my face. This is going on the HOA record. You'll be lucky if CPS doesn't get involved. Just then, a faint rumble turned into a roar. The kind of sound you feel in your chest before your ears register it. Down the road, 3 matte black SUVs rolled into view, moving in formation. Karen glanced over her shoulder, irritated. What now? She muttered. What she didn't realize was that her worst nightmare had just arrived, wrapped in military muscle and fueled by family loyalty. Karen turned to face the approaching SUVs with a smug smirk, thinking it was probably some city maintenance crew she could bark at. But as the vehicles stopped with military precision, that smirk faltered. The doors opened in perfect unison. Out stepped 6 men, broad, composed, and unmistakably military, even in civilian clothes. Leading them was my father, Colonel James Mitchell, retired but still radiating the quiet authority of someone who'd commanded thousands. Even Emma, groaning softly in my arms, managed a weak smile. Grandpa Jim, she whispered. My father's expression shifted in an instant, from joy to concern, then to cold fury. He moved toward us with long strides, taking in the scene. His granddaughter bloodied, cradled in my arms. Karen still standing, in the middle of the chaos, phone in hand, oblivious. What happened to my granddaughter? He asked, voice calm but hard as steel. Before I could reply, Karen stepped up, still defiant. Excuse me, this is a private matter. That child was playing irresponsibly and damaged my bike. I am in charge of this neighborhood. The veterans exchanged glances. Master Sergeant Rodriguez actually chuckled. Not kindly. My father stepped forward. Ma'am, step aside while we care for the injured child. Karen's response. I don't take orders from some old man. That did it. Captain Thompson tapped his phone. Give me 1 second, he said. Within moments, the tide turned. Karen had no idea. She hadn't just insulted a grandfather. She'd declared war on 6 highly trained veterans, and they were just getting started. Let me tell you who rolled up that day. Not just Grandpa Jim, but a small army of protectors. First was Master Sergeant Rodriguez. Built like a tank, he had arms that could crush stone, but eyes that softened when he looked at Emma. Next, Sergeant Major Williams. He didn't say much, but one look from him could freeze fire. Captain Thompson, sharply dressed, was already tapping into databases on his phone. His specialty was military intelligence. Staff Sergeant Davis, a Navy SEAL, looked like he belonged on a recruiting poster. Then there was Lieutenant Colonel Adams, chest adorned with medals, calm and calculated. They were Grandpa's brothers, not by blood, but by something stronger. They had fought together in 3 wars, shared foxholes, and now they stood in front of my house, forming a silent wall between us and the woman who'd hurt my child. Karen had no clue who she was dealing with. Captain Thompson spoke first, phone in hand. Karen Elizabeth Whitfield, age 47, married to Robert Whitfield. 3 previous addresses, all with documented neighborhood disputes. 12 formal complaints filed against neighbors. 2 restraining orders. Oh, and currently under investigation by the State Oversight Committee. Karen blinked, her tan fading to ghostly white. How do you know that? Thompson raised an eyebrow. Military intelligence, ma'am. Rodriguez stepped forward. Ma'am, I've been recording this conversation for documentation. Would you like to restate your version of events? Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Meanwhile, Williams knelt beside Emma. Hey there, little soldier. Grandpa brought the cavalry. You're gonna be okay. Emma nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek. Lieutenant Colonel Adams was already on the phone with someone official. Yes, sir. Military family involved. Civilian negligence, requesting local authorities, and medevac ASAP. Within minutes, sirens howled in the distance. Help was coming. Karen, she was surrounded. By witnesses, by veterans, by truth. And most terrifying of all, for the first time, she had no control. As the sirens grew louder, Karen's bravado began to crack. She still tried to talk over everyone, puffing herself up like she mattered more than the injured child on the ground. This is still my neighborhood, she snapped. I chair the HOA, and I will be reporting this mob to the board. You've done enough reporting, Colonel Mitchell replied, his voice like a loaded rifle. Karen narrowed her eyes at him. You don't scare me. That was her final mistake. Captain Thompson's phone rang. After answering, he looked straight at Karen. That was the State Oversight Committee. Based on your long-standing pattern of abuse in this incident today, you're being removed from your HOA position, effective immediately. Karen's mouth dropped open. You can't do that. I have rights. You do, Officer Martinez said as he stepped forward. He was a local cop, also a veteran, and he greeted my father with a respectful salute. Colonel Mitchell, sir? Situation under control? Getting there, Dad said. Officer Martinez turned to Karen. You have the right to remain silent. You are under arrest for reckless endangerment, harassment, and leaving the scene of an injury. He clicked the handcuffs in place. Karen shrieked. This is outrageous! You're all conspiring against me! Mrs. Patterson, our sweet neighbor from across the street, stepped up. I've got security camera footage showing you staring at your phone and speeding. Mr. Chin, who lived next door, added, and I've reported you 3 times for threatening my kids with citations for playing tag. Karen looked around. No one defended her. The board she used to control had turned into a jury of her peers, and they had found her guilty. As she was led to the squad car, Emma, still in my arms, looked up at me. Is the bad lady going away? I kissed her forehead. Yes, sweetheart. Justice just arrived. Neighbors who once hid behind closed blinds now stepped forward. Witnesses recounted how Karen's reign of petty terror had stretched far beyond our family. Mrs. Patterson submitted video footage to the police, clearly showing Karen speeding down the road, eyes locked on her phone screen. It captured the moment of impact, the horror, the chaos, and Karen's indifference. Mr. Chin provided a statement about Karen's long-standing campaign of harassment, particularly targeting families with children. She had filed formal complaints against 6 residents over the last year for absurd reasons. Tricycles on sidewalks, sidewalk chalk, even a lemonade stand once. Another couple mentioned Karen threatened them with fines for hanging holiday. Decorations too early. As the statements piled up, the police officer looked overwhelmed, not by doubt, but by the sheer scale of Karen's misconduct. Even the HOA treasurer came forward, sharing discrepancies in Karen's expense reports. "We didn't want to say anything before," she said, "but enough is enough." This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about an entire neighborhood standing up to a bully, and for the first time in years, people weren't scared. They were angry. They were united, and they were done being silent. The ambulance arrived first, followed by 2 police cruisers and a fire truck. Officer Martinez, flanked by another officer, coordinated quickly with the veterans. As the paramedics assessed Emma, gently stabilizing her wrist and checking for signs of concussion, Officer Martinez gathered statements. The accounts were consistent. Karen had been riding recklessly while distracted by her phone. No evasive actions, no remorse. Captain Thompson handed over his notes and video evidence. "Everything's documented," he said. "Names, timestamps, GPS coordinates, military-grade surveillance." Martinez nodded, then approached Colonel Mitchell. "Sir, your granddaughter's lucky to have you, and this team. We've got it from here." Emma was gently loaded into the ambulance, and I rode with her holding her hand. As the doors closed, I looked back at Karen, handcuffed, defeated, and being read her rights. Justice had come not in anger, but in calm, focused force, the kind that protects, not punishes, the kind that shows up exactly when it's needed. Taper. Kind Karen never saw coming. At the hospital, doctors confirmed Emma had a mild concussion, a sprained wrist, and a handful of bruises and scrapes. It could have been so much worse. She was brave. Even through the tears and bandages, she tried to smile. That evening, as she rested in her hospital bed, the door opened, and in came the cavalry. All 6 veterans arrived with gifts in hand. Rodriguez brought a stuffed bear in camo gear. Williams carried a bouquet of sunflowers. Davis handed her a bracelet made of paracord. Thompson showed her pictures of famous places and promised postcards from his next mission. Adams presented a hand-drawn official military certificate of bravery. Grandpa Jim leaned down. "You were so brave today, sweetheart." Emma smiled, clutching the bear. "Are all soldiers this nice?" "Only the best ones," he said. "And you're braver than most I served with." Laughter filled the room as stories and memories were exchanged. The veterans didn't come to intimidate. They came to uplift, to show Emma that kindness and strength aren't opposites. That night, surrounded by men who had seen the worst of the world, my daughter saw its best. And in that room, healing truly began. Karen Whitfield faced swift consequences. She was charged with reckless endangerment, harassment, and negligent injury of a minor. The court imposed probation, mandatory anger management classes, and hundreds of hours of community service, including trash collection duty on the very street she once ruled. She was also ordered to pay Emma's medical bills and damages. But the true verdict came from the community. In a unanimous vote, Karen was permanently removed from the HOA board. Her position was filled by Mrs. Patterson, a kind-hearted grandmother who believed sidewalks were meant for hopscotch and driveways for laughter. Under new leadership, Maplewood Heights transformed. HOA meetings became potlucks, fines were replaced with neighborly reminders, and the atmosphere of fear melted into one of friendship. Karen? She sold her house and moved away within 3 months. Her departure wasn't celebrated with spite, but with quiet relief. A chapter had closed. In her place came a young family with twin toddlers. Their first weekend on the block, they joined Emma in coloring the sidewalk with chalk stars and smiley faces. What was once a battlefield had become a playground again. And the scars Karen left behind? They were healing fast. Every Saturday, Emma still draws hopscotch squares. But now, she isn't alone. Children from every corner of the block come to play. Parents bring folding chairs and coffee. Grandfather, Jim and his veteran brothers form a quiet ring of guardians at the end of the driveway, sipping coffee, telling stories, and watching over the next generation. Word spread about our street that this was the neighborhood protected by soldiers, bound not by duty but by love. The fear that once lingered like fog had lifted. In its place was sunshine, sidewalk chalk, and the pure sound of children laughing without looking over their shoulders. Maplewood Heights had become something special, not because of rules or order, but because people stood up when it counted. Every night, as I tuck Emma into bed, she asks for the same story. Tell me about the day Grandpa's army came to save me. And every time I do, she never gets tired of hearing how 6 strangers stood up for her, how Grandpa's voice could silence fear, how truth won, and kindness wasn't weakness, but strength in its purest form. I used to think stories like that only lived in movies, but I saw it with my own eyes. Karen learned that power built on fear collapses fast. That hurting a child doesn't just spark outrage, it summons an army. Emma learned that no matter how small she is never alone. That love is louder than cruelty. And I learned that sometimes the universe aligns perfectly, not by chance, but by something greater. Call it fate. Call it divine timing. Call it justice in uniform. Now, every hopscotch square, every giggle, every tiny hand smeared with chalk is a symbol of resilience. Because in our neighborhood, bullies don't win. Heroes do. And sometimes they show up in black SUVs, 3 minutes after the worst moment of your life, to make everything right again.